David Nelson lived in brother Ricky's shadow and played subordinate role to him despite their twin bond. Many people wondered if David Nelson was ever jealous of his brother Ricky Nelson's success. However, the siblings were like twins and had a genuine rapport. And if David held some resentment against his famous brother, he dealt with it well. David Nelson was the last surviving family member from the show The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet until he died in 2011. His real and television family included Harriet Hilliard, her husband Ozzie Nelson, and their teenage idol son, Ricky Nelson. The four were famous for being the stars of a classic television sitcom in the 50s and 60s. According to his publicist, Dave Olson, David died from colon cancer complications. He was 74 when he died at his Century City home. David was 12 and his younger brother was 8 when they got to have their radio show roles before making a film, Here Come the Nelsons, in 1952. The movie became a pilot for the family's television series. In October 1952, David's family started their ABC show, which ran for 14 years, with a total of 22 years both on radio and television. Ricky and David became the series stars, with the latter describing the former as the wisecracking kid brother. The older sibling noted how his younger brother had grown up on television. He also noted that Ricky was the joker while he was the straight shooter. One of the younger Nelson brothers' famous catchphrases was, "I don't mess around, boy." David was more introverted and quiet and was in awe of how Rick overcame his shyness so he could perform in concert or on camera. Speaking about his role in the family, David said, "I was the only listener in the family. Mom and Dad and Rick were the musicians." During an interview for the biography, Teenage Idol Travelin' Man, David was asked whether he'd ever felt jealous over Ricky's success. His response showed how bonded he and Ricky once were. Besides being a teenage idol, Ricky eventually had a wife and children. However, his marriage failed to last, and soon after he lost his life in an accident. And David had to pick up the pieces for his late brother's family. Ricky's life and fame and his early death, how David had to show up for his brother's family. The book, Love, Honor, and Cherish Until Marriage Do Us Part, revealed how Ricky met his future wife, Kristen Harmon, in the 1950s on his family's television show. She met him again in her teenage years. According to rumors, the duo became so close that Ricky made Kristen pregnant at 17. The young couple had their first child, daughter Tracy Nelson, and later married. The union lasted for 8 years, and in that time they welcomed 3 more children. Ricky's addiction to illegal substances and his wife's drinking problem allegedly led to their divorce. In January 1963, David's brother was still basking in his fame and signed a 20-year Decca Records deal where he'd be paid over $1 million in disc revenue. Ricky was the most recognizable teenage idol of his time. He was able to move from a television acting career to singing quickly. David's younger brother could go on tours around the country, and not long after his marriage fell apart, the star was involved in a fatal accident. In 1985, Ricky was engaged again and flying in his DC-3 plane with his fiancée, Helen Blair, and 5 other people when they crashed close to DeKalb, Texas. The co-pilot and pilot survived the crash, but the singer, then 45, and the rest of the people didn't. David's brother was flying to Dallas for a New Year's Eve concert at the Park Suite Hotel in Dallas when the plane crashed. The older Nelson sibling became the executor of his late brother's estate and was involved in everything that had to do with Ricky afterwards. David had to continually deny that he was jealous of his late brother's success. Instead, he revealed they were close despite having different personalities, and the older sibling held Ricky in high regard. The bond David and Ricky shared. In David's interview with Philip Bash for the author's biography, he answered the long-standing question about whether he'd been jealous of Ricky's success. The older brother denied the accusation. However, he did share a story that revealed that there might have been some degree of resentment. David said it was hard for him to imagine any 2 brothers closer than him and Ricky, despite their 4-year age difference, adding, "There was a bond between us like twins. We knew each other so well we didn't have to talk much. There was a real rapport." Showing the cracks in his story, David admitted that finding a theme for their show had been challenging, but he got help from his mother. Delving into his relationship with his brother, Ricky's sibling said, "Emotionally, it was very difficult for me to focus in on Rick." The television star shared how, if he was still hurting, investigating the root of it helped put things into perspective. Bash once noted how the two siblings had different personalities, with David being close to their mother and Ricky bonded to Ozzy. Whether David Nelson resented his younger brother Ricky Nelson or not, he took the responsibility of putting things in order. It made sense to the author because Harriet played a subordinate role to her husband, just as their older son played the same one to Ricky. Bash said everyone who knew the siblings believed David held some resentment against his brother but dealt with it well. According to 2011's Chicago Tribune article, David was defined by his younger sibling. He walked in the shadows of his teenage idol brother, a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame member. In 2017, Sam Nelson, one of Ricky's children, talked to Jeremy Roberts about his late uncle, David, and how he showed up for their family after the famous star passed. Sam recalled how everyone had been lost after Ricky's death. Whether David resented his younger brother or not, he took the responsibility of putting things in order. Sam described him as a good and quiet man, revealing how he was looking for his father after losing Ricky. He wished David had been more like the late star than he was. The older Nelson brother paid tribute to his younger sibling by creating a documentary and remaining devoted to Ricky for life.